Hey everybody, welcome to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton Reimer as usual. How's it going, Dayton?
It's pretty good. Had a nice quiet day today where I just got to relax, work on some articles. It was I think it was very much needed. I've been going pretty fast, pretty hard this last few days and got to take it slow. I always appreciate the opportunities to do that. So,
Good.
feeling
We've
good, feeling well rested. How are you doing?
good. Same kind of day here. Yesterday and today were snow days at school, so and I'm banking on another one tomorrow. So, yeah, good amount of snow falling. So
Hmm.
before we get into the today's episode, got to start with the sad news that's going around the city of Ottawa and Sens Twitter and everywhere. Most people have heard by now, but Sean Simpson has passed away. He was a phenomenal member of the media world, the world in general, as you mentioned, Dayton, when we were talking about it. Um, he was kind enough to give us some time and be on the show a couple times. Everybody that follows Ottawa sports knows how important that Sean Simpson was to the landscape in general. So I just wanted to give out my condolences, especially to the Simpson family, everybody at TSN 1200, everybody at Coming in Hot. He made a mark in so many places that it's hard to mention everybody. So I just wanted to start with that. Dayton, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, he's just seemed like such a genuine person. Of course, I didn't know him super well, but he was one of the few media members, I guess, that I got the opportunity to chat with because he was on our podcast at one time. And just the warmth and um the way that he would communicate. Uh I always really respected how kind and genuine he seemed. Um and I think based on some of the messages, well, all the messages that I've seen on Twitter, that's a thing that a lot of people took away from being with him. And yeah, I feel like it's a really tragic thing to learn to see somebody pass on like that, I guess. So it's a tough day for for the Senators community, for the media world, and for really anyone who knew him and got to run into him. Yeah, definitely thinking about all those people who won't be able to share in his journey anymore. But I guess one thing that does offer, I guess, some peace is that hopefully he found some peace.
Hope so. And I think one of the biggest things about his impact, I mean, some people think of uh, Simmer, and obviously I wasn't in his offline world at all. I didn't know him outside of the Ottawa Senators, and outside of Twitter, and but for everybody that's on it, sure, there were lots of people that would always disagree with his takes and always say like this isn't realistic, blah blah blah. But that's what I loved about him. He shared his thoughts. He was so unapologetically himself. So whether you thought that he had the best takes ever, or you disagreed with some, that didn't bother him. Like it didn't stop him from posting them. He was himself, and that's you don't see that from very many people in the media. And so I always had the utmost respect for him. That's why I was always like a huge fan of everything. Throughout the COVID pandemic, listening to him and JR on TSN 1200 every morning, it was yeah, he was always great to listen to, always good to follow. Always gave everybody a good laugh when he used his K on Twitter. So yeah, just sending love to everybody that's impacted by the passing of Sean Simpson. And I just wanted to say on here that anybody that is struggling with anything, any internal battles or mental health or whatever it is, or you just need somebody to talk to, my DMs are always open. On Twitter, at Jacob Billing 10, always available. I would rather talk to somebody about anything than to hear any tragic stories. So there's no way to transition out of this. It's it's impossible. But it was important to start the episode that way. So, um, talking about the Senators, they're currently in the third spot in the Atlantic Division. Is it possible that they can stay there? Right now, they have games in hand. Or yeah, they have games in hand on most of the teams below them outside of the Tampa Bay Lightning. They only have a 1 or 2 point lead on all the teams in the race, though. So like, it's not like they're comfortably in that spot. Do you think that it is possible for them to hold on to an Atlantic Division playoff spot? Do you think they'll be able to move up the standings, and catch Toronto or Florida? Or is falling back down into the wild card more realistic?
There's a lot in there. I don't see them catching the top two teams. I don't think that is a possibility with the team that it is right now. They're a good team, but I don't think the Senators have ascended to a great team yet, if that's fair to say. Um, they still are growing into a competitive team. They've made a lot of additions. Steve Staios has shown that he knows how to pick out talent, and a lot of those guys have been doing exactly what they were supposed to do when they arrived. Um, it's not quite at the level of Florida or Toronto, and I think that's fine. To be in that third spot right now is, I think, everything that the Senators could have hoped for this season. I also think that they can keep it, but they have to either stay healthy, which you never know if that's going to happen, or they're going to have to make some tweaks, I think, especially to their bottom six. There are some, I think there's some gaps in their depth, and the best playoff teams have a lot of depth that they can rely on, they can bring in when an injury comes, and the Senators just don't have that right now. So they're basically one bad injury from dropping out of the race again, like we saw with Ullmark falling and a lot of their, who else was down? Everybody was. So
Amadio, Perron, Ullmark, Nick Jensen might miss some time.
yeah,
Sounds like he's going to be back, but yeah, everybody.
everybody. So I could see them staying within the race. I'd imagine they'd fall into a wild card spot just because the Atlantic and the East is such a tight race right now. Um, but I think they have enough to remain in that race until the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so too. You mentioned the bottom six kind of needing a bit of a revamp, or at least a big addition to it. Ridley, Gregg, and Shane Pinto, they're staying in the bottom six. I don't think there's any question about that, especially after Ridley Gregg's extension. Um, Adam Gaudette, you're not touching that. He's got 15 goals. I think he's third or on the team in goals. So then you got Highmore, Ostapchuk, and Amadio. So what are you looking at moving out of those three or improving on? And that's not including Nick Cousins, who's going to miss 8 weeks with, I don't know, something's wrong with his knee after that hit with Jacob Quillen. But what do you do in that bottom six?
Well, I think unfortunately the weak link is Highmore. He is a great AHL veteran, but is he an NHL player? Maybe in small spurts. That I think you could improve there. Ostapchuk is young. I think he will be one day a fantastic bottom six player. I don't think he's there yet. So if you're talking about improving the roster right now, you could improve on what he is. Um, he will be better in the future than probably anybody you can bring in. So like, don't trade him away. That's not what I'm saying. But you could improve on what he's bringing right now, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's nice to see Greg and Pinto starting to get a bit of their rhythm back. But for a while, those guys weren't scoring, and so no goals were coming from the bottom six because Gaudette he's streaky, right? He had a real good run at the start of the season, and then there was, I don't know, maybe about 15 games where he didn't have a single goal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like you got to find somebody who could come in and give, I guess, a bit more of a consistent boost to everybody in there. And I think there is opportunity to move some guys around. Maybe you want to move some of those guys onto the second line and shift some things there. But even then, this top six is pretty much set. I don't know if you want to mess around with that too much.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, with Nick Cousins out too, it kind of hurts. He's been underratedly good. You
Agreed.
definitely use an upgrade on Highmore and Ostapchuk, and even Amadio. He's fine in there. I'd like to see him on the fourth line and have a more scoring winger on on the third line. Um, so with that, let's move into you posted an article 5, 6 days ago now. 4 days ago, sorry. Looking at three trade targets. So number one you had on there is Andrei Kuzmenko. I also wrote a piece about this. The salary cap is a bit hard to get work around with him. I think he makes 5.5 million or 4.5 million. Um, but he scored 39 goals 2 years ago. It doesn't happen by accident. Obviously, he really struggled in Vancouver. They traded him to Calgary, struggling, and he was doing great in Calgary, and now he's struggling in Calgary too. Um, so he seems to start really hot with teams and then cool off. Do you, do you think that they should bring him in?
I'm really torn on whether they should really pursue him. His contract is not great. I think it's closer to 5.5 than 4.5. Um, so you're gonna have to balance it that way. They do have LTIR room, but you can't rely on that because some of those guys are expected to come back within a month or so, right? Um, he does have a good track record, and the Senators are a good place for players to kind of get that boost again. At least they have in the past. But the Senators also brought in somebody who had a really, really good season 2 years previous, and then he came in Ottawa and he was really, really bad. And that was a big, big trade that could have been used a lot better. And of course, I'm talking Matt Murray.
Not at all where I thought you were going with that, actually.
Really?
I
I'm
was thinking
thinking
Alex DeBrincat.
there. Okay, so it's happened numerous times.
Yeah.
Um, I honestly forgot that DeBrincat was in Ottawa.
Yeah, it's a forgettable time. Hey, we
Yes.
got Donovan Sabrango out of it.
Yay.
And a first for Matt for the Linus Ullmark trade. But
Yes. So you can kind of connect that back. Um, so I don't know, like if he costs a mid-round draft pick and Calgary retains salary, I'm interested. I think that would be a great value, especially because he's kind of all over the place. Bring him in, put him on the third or second line. You get that scoring punch. He does have speed, and the Senators are a quick team. I don't know. I think it could be good if you start having to add players. I'm already really hesitant because then you're giving up real pieces. Uh, and for Kuzmenko, who's somebody who could become something or he could be nothing. Like you're getting one or the other, and I don't think there's an in between.
But the trade market was already set for Kuzmenko with Taylor Hall. So the Blackhawks traded Taylor Hall and retained 4.5 million on Rantanen, which doesn't really matter who you're retaining on. So if you're getting Kuzmenko and they retain the 2.75 million, half of his salary, that's not even gonna cost you a third round pick. Hall has more value than Kuzmenko. They're not retaining as much, so that's like a fourth round pick for him at 50%. He's got 4 goals this year in 37 games. Not ideal, but if you're paying a fourth round pick, you can scratch the guy. Like it's not like you're bringing this guy in to solve all your problems and make the playoffs. You hope for it, but for a fourth round pick, it's worth the risk. You can scratch him.
Yeah, and if that's the trade, I'm interested.
Yeah.
But will Calgary do what Chicago is? Because I think they're in two very different places. Chicago very much still rebuilding. Calgary, they're in a playoff spot. And I think they also have enough steam to make the playoffs. Um, let me just confirm that. Last I looked, they were in a playoff spot.
The
So
Canucks knocked them out of the playoffs last night.
did they? Okay.
Yeah,
So I mean they're
but they're right
close.
there.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't
right
know.
there.
I'm not confident enough in the Flames. I don't imagine that the Flames are that confident that they can make the playoffs either. I mean, the two teams they're fighting for the wild card spots for is Vancouver and Colorado, two people that at the beginning of the season were cup favorites. So, um,
But Vancouver's going to lose somebody, maybe multiple pieces. And are they going to bring
or
in
not.
I don't know. It's I think there's enough bubbling around there that they're gonna trade at least somebody.
But then I think they get better. So
You
yeah,
think
they're
so?
gonna trade. They might lose the trade, but I think they're still gonna get better.
Well, maybe.
I don't know, because then you just get rid of some of that tension.
Yeah. I still don't think Calgary's gonna be sellers though, because they are never sellers.
No,
Uh,
I don't think they'll be sellers, but trading Kuzmenko for a fourth round pick isn't being a seller. But when it comes to the retention, I'm gonna look at their salary cap right here. They have they have $17 million in cap space right now.
Calgary does?
They can retain 3 million.
Yeah. 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 Like I said, I'm interested if that's the cost. Um, and I think you said it well when it's like if it costs a fourth rounder, you can scratch him. That's that's fine. It's just he's a risk. And I think he's a
Yeah.
pretty significant risk. Do the Senators want to add that big of a risk right now? Maybe. And I don't know if I can be much more definite on someone like Kuzmenko than that.
Yeah, that's fair. So moving on, you didn't really swing for the fences with these players, which is commendable because it's not likely that Ottawa's going to be getting JT Miller or Elias Pettersson or like it's worth having the conversation around them. But these were some pretty realistic trade targets. So next up on your list is Fabian Lysell, right winger. Honestly, I was really hoping Ottawa drafted him in 2021 instead of Tyler Boucher. Um, Still not loving that decision, but he's been doing pretty good in the AHL. He's got over 100 points in 2.5 seasons. So, um, yeah, things are going pretty well for his development. Maybe not as well as the Bruins were hoping for, but what do you see in Lysell that you'd want to acquire him for?
So he's another guy that I would try not to move too much for, and that's kind of why I picked the guys I did in this article is I don't think the Senators need to move or should be moving a lot of pieces. They don't have pieces. And the pieces that they could move aren't going to bring in much more than like a late pick. They don't have a lot of value. So if they can find high value or even like mid value for not a lot, those are guys I think the Senators should pick. And Lysell just hasn't really clicked with the Bruins for whatever reason. Like he's not really getting call ups. And
He's only
anytime,
got one game, yeah.
yeah, um, anytime they do bring him up, he doesn't play. He just isn't getting the opportunities. He's doing fine in the AHL. And so I'm wondering if maybe he just needs a change of scenery, right? He's not clicking with either their systems or their coaches or their team dynamic or something, right? And that thought, because he doesn't really show up on any trade bait lists, but we were talking about him a little bit on the prospect corner a week or two ago. And so that kind of brought him into my mind. It's like, oh, he could be an interesting target. And so I looked at the one game that he played with the Bruins. Like he didn't do a lot, but he had some pretty decent possession stats. And he was playing with Trent Frederick and Justin Brazeau, two guys who I would argue play very similar styles to what the Senators are bringing. They're fast, they're tough, they're gritty, and Lysell did pretty well alongside them in the mainly offensive role. So is that somebody who could come in, play that offensive role, and click with guys like Ostapchuk or Amadio or Greg or Pinto?
He did well with Ostapchuk in Vancouver with the Giants,
That's right,
the
they did cross
WHL.
paths.
Yeah,
He was older and Ostapchuk was quite a bit younger, but
yeah, yeah. I don't I wouldn't mind it at all. I like Lysell, but I'm not sure that he helps solve any of the issues right now. Um,
that's fair.
yeah, I don't know. There's certainly an argument for it. I just don't think he helps the Senators make the playoffs this year. That's my biggest thing.
Maybe not, but he's also somebody that you're getting something, right? Even when you trade, you are getting something. And he has another year in his entry level deal. So you have him for another year at less than $1 million.
Yeah,
He will make your AHL team better, and the Senators need some help in the AHL. Just even to help mentor some of the young guys who are coming in and doing well, but also need to increase their consistencies. And if he does click in the NHL, he could be bringing a lot of goals. And that's something that I think the Senators really need on the bottom six is somebody who can score because they're just not getting enough offense from the bottom six. The top six is finally starting to click again, but you can't have a team where only, goals come from three guys. The Senators have tried that in the past and it goes poorly every time because they're just not getting enough from the rest of the team. And that results in a lot of guys kind of burning out by the end of the year. So I think Lysell at least maybe doesn't make the team better now, but he could make them a lot better in the future. And like
That's
as
true.
soon as next season.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, no disagreements there. So what about Ryan Donato? You had him on the list there too.
Yeah, to me he's like the perfect in between of Kuzmenko and Lysell. So Kuzmenko is, I think, pure risk. You could either get somebody who scores 20 goals in the last 20 games, or you could get somebody who doesn't put up another point and then walks to free agency. Lysell is somebody who you're kind of making a bit of an investment for. Both will come cheap, almost definitely, but you don't. With Lysell, you're kind of investing in like, okay, maybe he doesn't make our team this year, but he should be on the team next year. Donato will be on the team this year. He's doing fantastic in Chicago uh, with a lot of minutes. He's, I think, playing a career high of about 15 minutes per game. And he knows how to score. He knows how to perform on a team that doesn't perform. And he's not playing a lot with Connor Bedard because you'd think, oh, a lot of goals. He's probably playing with somebody really skilled. No, he's generally playing on like the third or second line.
Yeah,
So he is somebody who knows how to produce. And sure, he has a one-dimensional game, but the Senators have been very strong defensively. They need somebody who can bring that one dimension.
yeah,
Um, he is decently cheap at I think about 2 million.
yeah,
Um, and his possession stats and his metrics are pretty good for being on a very bad defensive team. Chicago lets in or has let in, I think they're in the bottom five for goals allowed from when I last looked. Uh, I'm doing a lot of this on memory. I don't have those numbers
yeah.
in front of me. But you said it's like only 4 days old. So
They are
they're
bottom five. They're tied with the Buffalo Sabres for the fourth most goals allowed.
yeah. So you're not going to have great numbers on a team like that. But his numbers are like right in the middle. They're not bad, but they're not fantastic. And I think on a better defensive team like the Senators, you could get him performing even better. Um, Kind of masking some of those defensive issues that he has. He's somebody who can play across the lineup. He could be on your second line. He could be on your third line. You might throw him on the fourth line just to see, if anything sparks. But he's a pretty solid, middle six winger who brings a lot for not a lot of price.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense too. But he's also a guy that I could see going for way more than he should really cost.
That is something I did think about, but I chose to leave
He's
him in because I saw Taylor Hall, who I thought would go for more as a veteran, who does score quite a bit when he is healthy. He went for what? Nothing? Like, what
yeah,
did the Blackhawks get back? I
it
don't
was a
know.
third round pick and $4.6 million in retention,
Yeah,
which that retention costs you a third round pick.
yeah. So would Donato cost a third? Maybe a second? I'd pay a
Yeah,
second for Donato.
it all depends on like it's an auction. Donato, more teams are gonna want him than like they couldn't move Taylor Hall at all. I don't know why, um, but it sounds like there's interest in Donato, and so it's gonna kind of drive the price up a little bit. But
Yeah, and that is like I said, a thought that I did have when I was putting him on the article.
Yeah.
as my top three targets. He could be expensive, and in that case, the Senators would have to look elsewhere. But
Yeah.
he's at least interesting enough to warrant a bit of a, kick in the tires. What do we got here? Could the Senators get involved in a minor bidding war? You definitely don't want to move a piece who's already on the lineup. Um, at least I wouldn't. I
Unless
think,
Hamannik waves there's no move clause.
yeah,
I'd be okay with that trade.
yeah, yeah, that would work.
Yeah. All right. Is there any other names floating around the NHL? I mean, they could look at Brandon Saad, who's going to be a free agent tomorrow. They could look at Brandon Tanev, um, Jake Evans. That trade's not going to happen between Ottawa and Montreal, but could be a target. Yanni Gord, or do they go a little bit bigger with Brock Nelson, um, Dylan Cousins? Like, there's so many names out there right now that make perfect sense to bring in. But is there any that you can see the Senators really wanting to target?
Maybe, yeah. I do think Jake Evans would be an interesting target, but I do agree that they probably can't afford him. Um, I think the Senators should avoid aging veterans on expiring contracts. So guys like Brock Nelson or Kyle Palmieri, who do have pretty good track records and could make a playoff team much better. The Senators aren't guaranteed to be a playoff team. I think they will, but they're not guaranteed. They're in a very tight race, and to start selling off pieces for temporary support is, in my opinion, a misguided venture. I don't think that's going to help the team because this is like their window isn't quite open, in my opinion. Um, I think they're at the door, and I think they're knocking. Next season, this has to be a competitive playoff team. This season, they need to just be there. And so if they don't go for some of these, these guys that could help them make it, that's fine. They don't need those guys. They need this team to experience what the playoffs are like. So they need to be there. And if they go deeper than expected, fantastic. That's
Yeah.
that's awesome. But you need to, you can't get involved in a bidding war for someone like Brock Nelson or Brock Besser or any of these veterans. I'd stay away from Brandon Saad as well. That's a guy who could make a playoff team a lot better. He's only
But
going
he's
to
not going
sign
to help
for
you
a
get
year.
there.
Sorry?
He's not going to help you get there, though.
Yeah, exactly. He's
Yeah.
somebody who comes in and makes your team deeper and tougher and provides a little bit of support in those tough games because he's got that experience. So guys I'd be looking at would be maybe Boston's Justin Brazeau. He's
Mm.
shown up on trade bait lists. He's got that grit. He's younger. I think he's 25 or 26. I think he could work really well with the Senators. Scott Lawton, I think he could be an interesting target.
Yeah.
He's still around as a trade target, showing up on all the lists.
I don't know how. I mean, like, Philadelphia's basically told everybody we're not trading him. Like, when you're asking for a first round pick for Scott Lawton, that's you saying that he's not available. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I agree. I think Philly is going to be a pain to bargain with, um, even though there are a number of guys who should be moved because they need something else other than what's happening there. Scott Lawton is one of those guys I can see needing that. Um, if a first is the consideration, Ottawa's out. They don't have a first to move, or at least like they have their first round pick, but they shouldn't move it. That's not something that needs to be in the cards right now. Um, but yeah, like what is Philly? Should they still be rebuilding? I would say so. Is Joel
Yeah.
Farabee open? I hear that he's not working out really well right now.
Kirby
He's
and
dropped.
Frost.
Morgan Frost. Yeah, there's another guy who would work, I think, really well in Ottawa.
Yeah.
A lot of these Flyers, I think, could be
Well,
Senators.
and I had one that I wanted to mention. It might be a bit of a hot take, but sticking with the Flyers, I'm really glad that you brought the Flyers into this conversation. I think it would be worthwhile bringing Rasmus Ristolainen in.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, the Senators, the biggest issue right now is offense. They've got
Mhm.
the defensive side of the game. No comments. Nothing needs to be done about the defensive side. Rasmus Ristolainen can move the puck better than about as well as Thomas Chabot, I would say. And right there with Jake Sanderson too, and they need some more of that. Um, right now, Chabot and Sanderson aren't having their best offensive years, and the Senators could just use some more puck movement from the back end. He makes 5.1 million for the next 2 seasons after this. That's a lot, but if you could get some more attention, and then you'd have to move out like Jacob Bernard Docker. That's another million. Like I don't know. I could see it working really well, and his defensive game has gotten a lot better over the last few years.
That is true. He's also the right shot, isn't he?
He has a right shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like him and Clevin would be fantastic, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Bernard Docker, I think, would be a fair, addition to that move. He can't be the only one, because of
No,
the
of
fact
course
now.
not.
Yeah, Ristolainen is an interesting one. Bring a little bit of that puck movement to the back end. I was trying to avoid messing with the blue line because I think it's working out pretty well right now.
Yeah.
Like you said, Shabbat and Sanderson aren't having their best offensive seasons, but I think they are improving defensively. Travis Green has got everybody kind of on the same page, and they have been clicking in that area. But you do need goals to win games. So
With that being
Ristolainen
said,
is,
I love Matt and Paolo with Clevin.
oh yeah,
He's been fantastic.
I'm glad they're finally giving him his shot because when they signed him, it looked like he wasn't going to stick around, and they kind of messed up Schmeichel.
Yeah.
Uh, they didn't give him a chance, and he could have been a fantastic bottom six depth forward, bringing that experience from the Czech leagues and the international experience. And I felt like they kind of jerked him around and didn't really let him play. And so he's like, yeah, fine, I'm going to go back home. Matt and Paolo stayed, and he's, I think, finally showing that he can be an NHL player, which is fantastic. He was my prospect of the week 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I never trust the Senators organization. No, Pierre Dorion, not the organization. Pierre Dorion when it comes to bringing in the European guys. Obviously, with Artem Zub, hit the nail on the head. Couldn't have done better. Everybody else just didn't work.
Yeah.
Zub was the outlier there.
What did you call it? PDST?
PMST, post-melonic
There we
stress
go.
disorder.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a conversation we were having over messages about the Quebec City stuff. It's quieted down already, so we're gonna
Yeah.
gloss over that today. But yeah, post-melonic stress disorder.
Yeah. You
So
could even throw Dorian in there. Post
yes,
Dorian stress disorder.
100%.
It's
All
such
right,
an interesting way that Senators fans and Senators media look at the team because for years you couldn't trust what they did.
not a bit.
Like they bring in a free agent, fantastic. You got a big free agent. He fails miserably because his game didn't mesh with anyone else on the team.
Yep.
He didn't address the issue. Um, and so Steve Saios came in. It's like, okay, here's the issues: goaltending, defense. So you get a defensive coach like Travis Green. You get a defensive specialist, um, like Nick Jensen. You give Matt and Paolo, who is more of a defensive player with some offensive skills, a shot in the NHL when they have some injuries.
And good physicality. I didn't expect
Mhm.
that out of Matt and Palo.
Yeah, he looked really good coming out of the Finnish league.
Yeah,
That's why he earned an NHL contract.
I've been very impressed. I think
Yeah.
he deserves that spot over Hamonic or Bernard Docker.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah,
I think those guys haven't been what they should have been.
for sure. All right. We'll wrap things up. We've got a couple things, but we're running low on time. We'll wrap things up with the goaltending, and we'll get to the rest next week. So with the goaltending, Linus Ullmark is about to be back, any day now. I think he's actually going to be on the bench tonight as the backup. Um, and Anton Forsberg has seemingly found his game after a season and a half. He's had a pretty good stretch of games here. And then Meriläinen, I mean, he had 2 off games, but he's still been phenomenal throughout his entire um, stint with the Senators this year. what do you do when Ullmark is back? Do you run three goalies on the roster? Do you send Mierleinen down, or do you waive Anton Forsberg?
Yeah, I'm just checking Maryland's last starts here. Okay, so he had a couple of 800 save percentage games. One of those was still a win though, so like
Yeah,
tough to complain about that. 2 goals on 16 shots. To me, that's if he faced more shots, he would have been fine. His numbers would have looked better.
yeah.
Um,
Well, to be fair, he did allow 4 goals. Two of them were waved off. That's why he got
that's
pulled.
right. Yeah, I forgot that was that game. I remember
Yeah,
talking about it. Um, yeah, he is still young. Um, man, would he serve as the backup? I think you still got to go with Forsberg as the backup. Um, because Forsberg can be good in a pinch. Mierleinen, I think, could be good for longer stretches. And it's good that the Senators have somebody that they can call up. And it's like, okay, now you are the starter. Um, and the one thing that is giving me pause is the Belleville Senators kind of have a mess in net right now.
yeah, they sure do.
Like, what do they have? 5 goalies who are getting regular rotation?
Yeah,
It's it's something stupid like that. And I keep checking on, who plays and Mad Sogard, who I don't think is injured right now, is he?
he is. He got re-injured a couple days
Got
ago.
re-injured. Of course he did.
Yeah,
Because I was checking on stats, it's like he hasn't played in like 2 weeks. And I was just, are they relying on some of their other guys? It's it's slightly chaotic, and someone needs to be moved out of that for Maryland to come back. So, for the sake of just not putting him into that situation, do you keep him up with Forsberg and kind of rotate those guys? I don't know. Um, he needs playing time. Maryland is a great goalie, but he needs to stay warm. So I think the Senators just need to shuffle some stuff around uh, in the minors to give Maryland his best shot. Because I think he's number 3 right now. He has proven that he is performing better than Sogard.
oh,
And
for sure, 100%.
right, Sogard used to be the number 3. I think he's lost that,
He
like definitively.
100%.
Right? He is,
Unless Sogard is the number three and Forsberg is your number four.
yeah, if you want to go it that way. Um, I think Forsberg's still number 2, like a 966 and a 960 in his last 2 starts.
And then a 962 in the fourth game.
Yeah. In between a 769. But you need a goalie who can come in and play a couple of games where he is strong. And he's done that in the past. I don't know. That's a tough one.
The the problem for me is that you need goaltending depth. And it's easy to keep the one that needs waivers and to just send the other one down. That's the easy thing to do. But you also need a backup goalie that can give you a chance to win when he plays. Anton Forsberg does not do that consistently. He
Mhm.
hardly does that at all. He has 3 of the last 4 games, but he can't do it with any consistency. It's hard to have any confidence with him in the net. Um, Mierleinen has given this team confidence in, I think, every single game he's played outside of that New York Rangers game, where the entire team looked terrible. It didn't matter if, I don't know, you could have had Ken Dryden and Igor Shesterkin in the net at the same time, and it still wouldn't have been a very confident game. Um, you got to go with the one that gives you the chance to win. And right now, that's not Anton Forsberg. Sorry, right now it is Anton Forsberg, but that won't, like, it hasn't been, it's been a season and a half, and now he's had a good week. I don't know. But also, he might be back, and we need to give him a chance to see. Like, I don't know.
It's really tricky because I think you probably lose him on waivers. I think there's enough teams that would be interested. But his contract is not great for what he brings. So
He makes
maybe,
almost 3 million.
yeah,
He's got an 894 on the season with a 6-9-1 record. I'm not sure he gets claimed. He might, but I'm not sure he does.
yeah. Because Grubauer was just on waivers. I think he passed through, didn't he?
Yeah, but he has like an 866 and he makes 6 million.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're comparable at least in terms of
Yeah,
skill.
I think it's an 866. It might be lower actually.
Yeah.
No, 866. And a 5-15-1 record. That's so bad.
Yeah, he's really fallen off, which has been sad to see because he had such a great start.
He did. He was with a lot of. No, he wasn't. I'm thinking of Darcy Kemper. He was with
Hmm.
Washington forever, behind Braden Holtby.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then to Colorado, then Seattle. That's it. Yeah,
Darcy Kemper, former Red Deer Rebel, fun
former
fact,
Red Deer Rebel. There you go. The more you know.
and from Saskatoon.
And from Saskatchewan. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I knew he was Canadian, so I just kind of figured Ontario because that's where everybody else is from.
Yeah, right? Nope. He's a good old Saskatchewan boy. And I was when the Capitals won the cup, because I believe Kemper was on the team then, wasn't he?
The Was he?
Somebody was.
I think so. When the Capitals won the cup,
Yeah,
did Kemper play for the Capitals?
I
Hang
might
on.
be I might be mixing
Um.
up some stuff.
Oh yeah, he did. He did. But not when they won the cup.
Right.
He was there. Right. He was there for the last 2 years. After Colorado won the cup. That's what. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Talking about him
Yeah.
and Grubauer got me so confused there. But yeah. So he would have brought the cup to Saskatoon in 2022.
There it is. Yes. Okay. So he did win
Yeah.
the cup.
Yes.
And I had a buddy who was working security for his Stanley Cup party.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, the party, not even like the parade. That's awesome.
Yeah. I don't think there was a parade as far as I was aware.
That's true.
Um,
2022, there was nothing.
yeah, but they did have a private function and he was working security for it.
That's really cool.
Hmm.
All right. That'll wrap it up for today. Thanks everybody for tuning in. It's been a really good episode. Lots of productive conversation. And again, I'm going to dedicate this podcast to Sean Simpson. May he rest in peace and hopefully feeling a bit better now. Um, and yeah, so we'll see you all next week. Thank you.